Hello and welcome to What the Tech from Boast AI, where we talk with some of the brilliant minds behind new and exciting tech initiatives to learn what it takes to tackle technological uncertainty and eventually change the world. I'm Paul Davenport, Boast resident tech journalist and head of content, and today I'm welcoming to the show Tyler Kelloway, Director of Finance at CoLab Software. Tyler and his team at CoLab have been working with Boast for years to streamline the shred process and funnel more money directly into their product roadmap. At CoLab, they are building tools and processes that are an engineering team's best friend, helping teams capture SME feedback, surface lessons learned, and accelerate design checks with generative AI. This all ensures that every design review leads to smarter decisions and faster progress. Collab solutions have been leveraged by the world's leading engineering teams, blowing up the status quo when it comes to accelerating design reviews to minimize team frustration and avoid long product development cycles. I recently spoke with Tyler to learn about his experience at Colab and working with Boast in particular. Along with outlining his path up the ranks, he details in particular how important it is to find a technical partner when navigating tax policy to avoid disruptions that could make or break a company's trajectory during critical stages of growth. It's a great story that I'm thrilled we can share. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Tyler. So Tyler, tell me a bit about yourself. I know you've been with CoLab for a little while, but what has your journey there been like? Where did you start? How did you get to your position today? And yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit of a niche journey. So I joined CoLab back in 2018. The team was just under 10 pre-revenue. They were looking for some just general bookkeeping help. I was at a big four accounting firm at the time. Thought it was an interesting opportunity to one, help a local company and also be exposed into tech. Took the opportunity, did the big four all day and in the evenings for about 10 or 15 hours a week. Did the general, although it was called bookkeeping, as you can imagine, a tech startup, you wear many hats early. So I took the bookkeeping, financial operations. There were even days where I was picking up lunch to start. As the company grew, that position also grew. So I quickly left the big four firm, fully committed, jumped in head first at CoLab. Fast forward about a year later, we were accepted into Y Combinator in 2019. That was, I'll call it stage one of growth. Stage two, or I guess stage one would be between 2019 and 2021. Stage two would have been our A, 2021 to 2024. Would have been stage three, which would have been the time between the A and the B. And now we're here, post Series B, revenue generating, and we've grown to about 150 people globally.
So you guys are firmly in that revenue generating camp, 150 people globally. Wanted to make sure I got some of these big notes too. Y Combinator back in 2019, 2021. Things took off from there. You got your Series A between 2021 and 2024. Then came Series B, and here we are today. And now that is a unique actual journey into your role. I can totally relate to the whole wearing so many hats at the top of it. Post is a very small and scrappy team. I came in as just a blog writer. I've now worn every hat on the marketing team. So I think regardless of departments, when you're in a fast growing tech biz, you got to grab coffee some days, you got to grab lunch everybody other days, and then get to the nitty gritty. So
Yeah.
that is really cool. Getting a little specific, I wasn't planning on it, but knowing that your background was in working with the big four and everything, and that's who we come up against a lot in the conversations around tax and everything like that. Maybe we can shelve that, but I would love to pick your brain about what it's been like working with Boast and how we approach our policies and how we approach actual navigating R&D tax credits, because it's such a subset of the larger work that the big four do, especially
Mhm.
when they're jumping in to kind of take over the in-house for everybody in terms of bookkeeping and accounting. So maybe we can talk about that when we get down a little bit. But before planting that seed for later, give me the pitch about CoLab. We've worked with you guys, we've done podcasts, and we've actually done case studies with you guys in the past. But in your words, what's the elevator pitch? How do you guys serve your customers, and what's the main mission there?
Yeah, so when I joined, I'm obviously not super familiar with the engineering industry itself. So when I joined, it was kind of like an aha moment on like, how doesn't this exist? How aren't there competitors? How are engineers still working the way they work? How, like, I'll say happily, they're content, and no one's really came and disrupted the market, and that's kind of what Colab does. So we've developed a design engagement system that essentially connects all the connected aspects of a design review when making new products. Specifically, we come into play with more complex products as well because there's more reviewers, there's more complexity, there's more guidelines, there's more suppliers, there's a lot more moving pieces. In a world without Colab, there's a lot of data being shared in areas it shouldn't be through screenshots, emails. There's a lot of actions recorded in either Excel, in your in Slack or Skype or Teams. And like I said, the more complex the product gets, the more of these disconnected redundancies occur. And it's almost like a snowballing effect where one thing can happen. And then one thing, as in where we have these 50 issues with the new vehicle we're building. That's recorded in my private repository. And then when the vehicle itself actually gets to production, 40 of my 50 issues that we had that were fairly critical were never resolved. Um, we've actually just released a product in July called Auto Review. So right now, CoLab's current state is essentially you go in, you upload your CAD, and then you go play with the product, you share it with your suppliers, and you collaborate to get to a final design. Auto Review is that, but it is almost the AI agent in the background that does a lot of the admin or the redundant tasks for you. So the engineer can actually just focus on making the critical decisions.
Honestly, I'm about to give the boast pitch just because that's so simpatico with how we do things too. It basically makes it so that we can be your record of truth and your single source of truth for all of the things that could delay a claim. So knowing that that's very different from the actual engineering field, it is the same kind of complexity that snowballs, that builds up. If you don't have a seamless tracking, first off, for all the processes and to make sure that you have all the receipts in terms of just like what happened when, so you can get to the bottom of those problems, but also not distracting folks from actually doing their main marching orders, for instance. Like, don't get bogged down in necessarily syncing all those processes together. Get a tool or get a solution like that auto review that simplifies the process and keeps you guys on track. We see it all the time in this tribe space. If somebody's an engineer, but they don't speak tech policy, gets bogged down in talking about tax policy, no one gets the claim at the end of the day. So you want to make sure those are seamless processes. And that's totally an ethos that we share here at Boast. So happy to hear that. Now, and again, you guys are unique in your space, correct? Like, I don't think there's anybody else who's been doing it. And that's kind of the aha moment that you were talking about too. When I talked to Patrick last time, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, so nobody's tackling these problems. They seem super prevalent. Is there anybody else doing what you guys do or anything similar? Or like, what is kind of the historic process that you guys are improving on? Just the way it's always been done?
Yeah, it's essentially just changing the status quo now to actually, as standards and guidelines become more complex and more strict, the status quo and how people work has not changed. There are no direct competitors in the space, but I'd say they're indirect competitors as in tackling subsets of what we do. Someone may come in for an early design and be able to do X. Someone may be in a strictly issue tracking tool, just track issues and not be able to complete any work. So there are different tools that are indirectly competitors, but there's nothing directly in our space.
Standards and guidelines are getting more complex and they're requiring more due diligence, but the processes themselves haven't really changed until you guys came on the scene and you started making all of these. And again, shout out to that new product that I believe you said came out in July too.
Yeah, Auto Review came out in July.
Auto review came out in July. Beautiful. Want to make sure I shout that out when we publish anything. So thank you for clarifying. All right. I'm going to skip some of the actual like technological uncertainty and qualification questions that are very developer centric and
Yep.
probably just jump straight into the R&D tax credit experience. So again, this is where I'm going to pick up on that seed that I planted before. You have experience in the Big Four, and you've also been from every step of the ladder at CoLab up to where you are today, having a hand in the finances and having a hand in funding that innovation. Can you tell me, I guess, about your experience with R&D tax credits, just generally before working with CoLab, whether you were exposed to them in the past, how things were done at the Big Four, and then today, your perception of all of that, having worked with Boast, having been a partner with us for a long time. And again, we've worked with many people on your team, but what has been your unique point of view going all the way
Yeah,
back? Yeah.
go back to, I guess, 2019 or 2018. I knew very little about SHRED and corporate R&D tax credits. Likely by choice. It's not the biggest, sexiest area of study. So I tried to stay away from that, I guess, aspect of finance and tax throughout my career, my education. Heard about SHRED locally. We had a founder or startup meetup to kind of talk about big problems. What are people dealing with? What should people be doing? And SHRED came up. So then that was the opportunity for me, one, to learn about it just from colleagues locally who are also dealing with similar problems, but two, also do the research myself to see, is this actually worth it? So at the end of the day, our first claim, I'd say, was probably the most challenging because you're trying to educate people internally on what shred is. You're trying to work with shred experts when you're not an expert. So it's hard to have that conversation one to one. And then we also went through an audit our first year, which made things a lot more challenging.
I can only imagine, and that's actually the biggest horror story that we hear is people will come up against an audit, and it's not always even necessarily like the quality of the claim. Like the CRA is going to audit on average about 25% of all claims, just regardless. But it's about getting all that documentation. There's so much more that you need to have present to actually defend your audit than even I think people who are experienced with taxes and are in bookkeeping and accounting space realize just because it's so technically specific. And it's also not even necessarily an objective. You really have to make the narrative that would convince a member of the CRA to approve that claim. And it's just something that requires two different mindsets. It's not fully financed, it's not fully tech. So I can only imagine those struggles. We had talked to Patrick previously about like the time drain and the time suck of A, making that first claim, and then B, the audit process. What would you say is your estimate about the pains around all of that? Whether that's how many hours that you sunk into it, how many team members actually went into it, how much did you actually claim after all of the headaches, and was it worth the effort? Obviously, it came to boast, so I assume not, but detail some of that for me.
So yeah, we've done two audits. One was extremely painful. I think it was around 12 hours of conversation. First four went amazing. We broke for lunch. We actually went out and bought lunch because the audit went so well. And then I don't know what happened when we came back, but we learned pretty quickly the auditor got caught up in a couple words in one of our responses that he was trying to eliminate the entire shred claim from these couple words. He wasn't really understanding the technology that we built itself. Then therefore he couldn't understand the technological uncertainties that we claim. That was extremely frustrating because the 12-hour audit could have been done in two if that understanding was there. And the challenging part was trying to communicate in a tax auditor's world what a new technology that you cannot compare to a competitor does so that they can understand it. That was really challenging. The magnitude of the claim was so small that we almost wanted to scrap the audit, but it was all our foundational work. So it would have set a precedent there forward. So there was a bit of a different angle on that one. Our audit in 2021 was a little different. The auditor itself was actually familiar with software development and tech, which made things, it was a lot cleaner. And the things that were struck from the shred claim, we agreed, fine, like that's okay. But he actually understood the technology itself, how it's built. He actually helped us reframe and reword some of the actual wording itself for future claims to make the uncertainties sound a little more shreddable, which was interesting. But I think the first audit we were 70 or 80% successful, and that was a huge win because of how painful it was. The second audit, we were 80 to 90% successful, and that one was very efficient. It was clean, and everyone felt like they had a win. From a time perspective, it it takes a lot of time. They ask a lot of like pointed, directed questions. When you're a small company, you typically do not have that documented process information on how XYZ is done, how XYZ is developed, who did what, and who did it when. That is the main reason the first audit and claim was the most painful, is because you're a small company. Like realistically, in your mind, you're going by day, you're working all hours on end, and shred is not your priority. So you do not set up your company to run around shred. You typically do the opposite and you try to claim shred around how your company runs. A 10-person company doesn't run very cleanly compared to a company of 200. Um, so the amount of hours, there was many, but we've gotten it down and down. Surprisingly, the bigger the company has gotten, the less hours we've spent on shred, and the higher our claim has actually been.
That is so interesting. And again, I think actually like it shouldn't have taken 12 hours for that first audit. And then again, coming back from lunch and then him getting hung up on those couple of words because they just straight up, again, don't speak both sides of the coin that you need to communicate the shred claim. You need that tech expertise. Sounds like you guys got the next year, but you made a great point too about like, we could just wash our hands of this. This is not worth the time suck, especially because the claim is so small at this first one. But you're completely right. It does set a precedent with the CRA about your technology and about your business that's going to carry forward. So I hate that you guys had that painful process out of the gate. I'm glad that, again, it sounds like you probably made a better impression with the CRA. And the second time around, even just having somebody with more of that tech expertise in your corner definitely streamlined the process. Love to hear again now, like working with Boast. Like, when did we come on the scene to help you out here? I love to hear that as you guys have grown, claims are getting bigger, the actual claim process demanding less and less. I'd love to think our team is learning more about you, and because we have the system set up to really maximize the process, that's helping make this more profitable and well, more equitable and simpler for you guys. But talk me through, when did Boast come in, and what have been some of the highlights since you've started working with us?
The year itself is a good question, but I can speak high level. So we were with the same accounting firm and Big Four firm for I'm going to say around four claims. We thought it was one. They had a bit of change of management, so it was a bit of change of process, but it was also a good excuse for us to go to market to see, are we still getting the best service and paying like market rate for this service. We looked at three big four firms and two niche shred shops. I consider Boast a very niche. This is what you do. Whereas, like you said, it's kind of like little bits of what a big four firm does because they spread so widely on offerings. Um, and honestly, we ran a full, pretty clean RFP process, and what came out of it was the partner, and specifically the technical partner, is the most important about anything. If you had unlimited amount of funds and you could take any shred partner in the world, the most important thing is your technical partner. That's kind of, we had this like 15 or 20 RFP criteria on how we were going to rate everybody, and it all kept coming down to, are they equipped to write this entire claim without us? And if they write this entire claim without us, will we have to go rewrite the claim? So when we first met Bose, you folks he's no longer with you folks. He's a really strong technical writer. He actually said the elevator pitch back to CoLab, and he understood it after the first call. There's always iterations, but it's a matter of, should we frame it like this to reference this? It's not a, this doesn't make any sense, we need to reshape this because it doesn't relate to anything we've actually done. So Bose, they were really, you folks were really great there. We've had another technical writer come on too. He's strong as well. It's just understanding the product, aligning with how you want to work together, and then actually getting that down in shreddable language, because it's typically not one and the same. You don't develop a widget and you have your process for your widget. And if you wrote how all that happened, that is not shreddable language. You need to make it seem like you're accomplishing your technological uncertainty, and then it also be reflective of what you actually did.
I love how you frame that too, because again, it's not, I'm probably oversimplifying it when I say you don't want the tail wagging the dog, but that's a thing. You want the shred claim to actually be, sure, it's a matter of reframing, not necessarily saying this is wrong or this isn't shreddable. It's about communicating how you're getting to that technological uncertainty. And I think that's something that gets kind of lost in the sauce when a lot of folks, or maybe like an off-the-shelf shred provider who don't necessarily, they might have like the AI tool to automate the process, but they don't actually have that experience or expertise doing the deep tech. And again, I keep giving both pitches here, but like our tech writers have done the damn thing. Like they have, in many cases, literally been building businesses on their own. A lot of the reason why we don't keep some shred writers is because they graduate to build their own businesses and they know how to navigate all of this, and we root them on long term. So I'm just super happy to hear that that's been your experience actually working directly with the tech writers too, because they're a wealth of knowledge, and I've learned a ton from them in the past. All right. And so going back to some of the questions that I have in our queue too, I think we talked about how you came in touch with Boast. You guys threw out that RFP. We checked the boxes. You had about 15 to 20 different pieces of criteria. And it all came back to understanding that technical data and making a technical partner who can really speak your innovation. What was the onboarding process like if you were involved in that? Was it technical? Was it something that was a time commitment, or any thoughts, compliments, good or bad?
I don't remember now. It would have been a few years ago, but I don't recall it being strenuous. And if it was, I don't think we would have joined. But I don't think it was strenuous across the board. So like through our RFP process, everybody wanted your initial meeting. Everybody wanted to understand your data, whether that's Jira, whatever you use for your development lifecycle software. But it seemed standard, but also like equipped to the market as well. So there was no painful process, but trying to understand the business and also set the company up in the tool to use in the future.
That makes sense. And honestly, I think if you did have memories about the process, then we did something wrong. So I think that as much as it can be like something that you didn't have to even feel the stress of or the pain of, that's music to our ears. We want to meet the market where it's at. Now, looking to now the actual value that you've gotten out of it. I know when I talked to Patrick last time, he was talking a lot about how they've actually used the shred funding to fuel some product roadmap. He alluded to some stuff that I think might actually have borne out that auto review product that came live in July. But could you maybe expand upon how you guys have used some of the funding that we've helped you capture through the R&D process to build new products and solutions? I think it was very early days on some things when me and Patrick were talking, so probably didn't have all the detail then. So let's dig in if you have any of that insight.
Yeah, I'd say early days, it's definitely a runway. It increases your runway significantly. I mean, when you're a company of 20 or 30, you have a couple $1 million and you have X amount of months until you always have that horrible plan. If I lose all of my customers and I have to pay all my vendors, and here's how many months I have left to survive. And Shred's one of those government funding, I guess, facilities that you can use that you get the cash immediately. So it's a little different than like something from NRC or any other government projects where you get $1 million committed, you get X amount per month, depending on how much you spend. Shred's almost a cash injected in the bank immediately. So yeah, it we use it for multiple things. At early days, it was likely runway extenders or helped us offset a few costs on hiring. Later days, it would have been to pull forward some of our roadmaps. So if we thought we were going to hire a team, let's say in Q4, receive the shred funding in Q2, we would start hiring in Q2 and pulled that forward at least a quarter or 6 weeks. Um, yeah, it's a different facility. When you're fighting it in an audit, it's painful, but when you get a file that's accepted and you receive the cash a week or two later, it is definitely amazing then.
No, that is awesome to hear. Now, to the extent that you're comfortable sharing, you had mentioned too that like the totals have grown year over year. Probably don't have to, you may not be comfortable sharing the hard numbers about how much cash we've actually helped you guys get back and put back into the bank. But even thinking about how the claim has grown percentage wise, is there a rough ballpark that you might be comfortable sharing that we could talk about there? Or
Sure. Yeah, I can do a ballpark. So from 2017 to 2019, I think we doubled every year from a claim perspective. And you can't forget, we're also juniors at doing this internally at CoLab. We weren't, I wouldn't say equipped to have a very expertise conversation. 2019 to 2021, we would have tripled one year and then went up around 10 to 20% thereafter. So we're slowly growing now. Like it's not the double, triple anymore, but the claims are still growing.
and again, you guys are growing at a clip. This is really, that speaks to the success of what you guys are doing and the value of your product too. It goes above and beyond the boast of it all. You're doing more claimable innovation that the government wants to get behind. So that's a credit to you guys, which is fantastic. All right, now some of the really cynical ones. Would you recommend Boast to other competitors? What's been your favorite thing about working with us that you really want to highlight for anyone who's out there, maybe on an RFP for a new shred provider?
So I speak fairly candidly, giving references. I gave you folks a reference for one of your prospects a couple weeks ago. I spoke very honest and openly. Typically, I like to hear their current state before saying, "Oh yeah, Boast is great. You should go with Boast." Because then I can talk about the difference between their current state and what I think a future state would look like. Um, Honestly, it has been great since we switched. It's been, I'd say, it saved our development time more than anything. I try to keep a lot of the financials in house. I let you folks almost review and approve, and then we send them off to our the accountants that file our taxes. They also review and approve. So, but it's definitely saved a significant amount of time on the technical side, just between the AI doing what it does with our data, producing the report, grooming the report, and then it coming to us and being able to reference something we did in February in Lehman terms, and how that translated over to the shred claim. It saves a significant amount of time.
No, I'd love to hear that. Again, I think that's a lot of the huge value too. Like shred isn't a commodity when you don't have to spend like dozens of hours working on the actual claim before you even get to the audit and then defending it and only getting a portion back. It can be valuable funding when you're not hung up on it and when it can almost be an automated process, which I hope we deliver for you guys. I guess I'd love to know, like, what's on the roadmap for CoLab? Like, what do you guys got coming up that you're looking forward to? Whether it's new products, new partnerships, anything we can cheerlead when we start sharing your story.
There'll be some exciting announcements coming over the next couple weeks. I will leave those private for now, but you will see them in the next 2 to 4 months.
That's fantastic. Okay, well, I will keep my eyes and ears peeled for that. Tyler, this is fantastic.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thanks, Paul.
Tyler.
Great to see you.
See you later. Bye.